Hey, this is Mike from Proactive. You're listening to the Building Bite podcast. Tune in as we spotlight our guest, Milena Russo, Construction Ecosystem Associate at AXA XL. Our episode is focused on bridging the gap between underwriting and technology. For more information on this episode and others, please check out the Building Bite at www.buildwithproactive.com.
Welcome to the Building Bite podcast, a podcast for construction contractors, owners, and insurance professionals, where you can hear from the experts about key topics to help you be successful. I'm Chris Epps, a Senior Director with Proactive, and I'm joined here with my co-host, Mike Diercksen, our Manager of Marketing and Business Development. Our guest today, and an up-and-coming thought leader within the construction insurance space, Milena Russo, AXA XL's Construction Ecosystem Associate. Our topic today is an exciting one as we discuss bridging the gap between underwriting and technology. Milena, how are you this afternoon?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Wonderful. We're happy to have you on. Can't wait to talk to you. Mike, how about you? How are you this afternoon?
Doing great, Chris. Really excited to have Milena on. I think it's going to be a really interesting topic. It's going to be exciting for sure.
Absolutely. This certainly feels like a true where the rubber meets the road type moment in a lot of the discussions and conversations we have on this podcast, because it touches so many of our listeners. Before we jump into our main topic, though, Milena, I was wondering if you could share a little bit about your career and your success and what led you to the AXA XL ecosystem.
Yeah, happy to. So I joined AXA XL. I started my career at AXA XL about 3 years ago. Prior to that, I graduated from St. John's University with a degree in risk management and insurance. I'm embarrassed to say I'm an insurance nerd and that I chose to major in insurance. Majority of people fall into it, right? So my studies at St. John's really prepped me for starting my career at AXA XL. I started in an underwriting role, doing some underwriting work. And I quickly realized that wasn't for me and it wasn't the best fit for me. And while I was questioning all of these things, I had the opportunity to meet Rose. And she explained to me what was going on with the ecosystem and what the ecosystem was about. And I quickly jumped for the opportunity because it seemed like a really exciting project to work with.
Yeah, what's interesting about that is what's not common, you chose insurance. But what is common, you graduated and you said, I don't know if this is exactly what I want to do. That definitely, I think many of us have been there. It's very rare to fall right into it right out of the gate. But that does seem like a really incredible start to your career, Milena. Like in Rose, we know Rose. She's excellent, great, dynamic person to learn from. Can you share a little bit, though? Like, what was it about the ecosystem that caught your attention? And has there always been this interest with construction and technology, or how did you get from underwriting over to the ecosystem?
Yeah, so there was never an interest in construction. I should say, I never had an interest in construction. I didn't know what construction had to offer. Knew about technology, like very little, not much. When Rose explained to me what the ecosystem was, what excited me the most was that I saw it to be a proactive solution in a reactive market. And so what do I mean by that? Insurance is generally reactive. Something happens, we respond to it. I saw the ecosystem as getting ahead of that and being proactive with the solutions they were offering to the industry. And so from there, as I started to learn about technology and how technology was impacting things and risk was changing, I started to think of, okay, now where's this correlation with underwriting? Where does this technology impact the actual risk that we're underwriting to, and how does that impact us overall as a company?
Which sort of brings us to the topic at hand, and definitely an interesting one at that. So, Milena, you and the ecosystem are looking not only to provide innovative solutions to the market, but to eventually turn those solutions into upfront savings for the firms that are going to utilize them and actually put them into practice and really do risk mitigation utilizing those technologies. Can you kind of walk us through that process and how AXA XL is exploring that space?
Yeah, definitely. So first and foremost, this is all a work in progress. We're no means in a way to say, hey, if you implement X technology on your job site, you'll get Y% discount, right? And I also want to say, we are very cautious in saying premium discounts, right? Because we don't feel that that's exactly what we're doing. It's adequately adjusting the premium for a risk that is now managed differently. And so what do I mean by that? The technology will directly impact the risk that's being considered, managed, et cetera. So what we were previously underwriting to is totally different than what we're underwriting to now. So bringing forward, how do we get this started? The ecosystem has 33 tech partners, and we started with them. We approached them and asked them, hey, tell us what tier you think you fall into, and then we can go from there.
And maybe, Milena, for our listeners who aren't as familiar, can we break that down? What do those tiers represent? You said 3 different tiers, but what are the 3 different tiers?
Yeah, so as you said, we have 3 tiers. Tier 1 prevents risk, Tier 2 reduces risk, and Tier 3 monitors risk. So I'll give you an example of each. Tier 1, preventing risk. I like to say water mitigation in this example, right? If you have a water mitigation technology that is proven to, you can shut off the valve, you can prevent the water leak from happening, you're preventing that water damage from happening, you're preventing the water clean, right? So that's your preventative. Second, reducing risk. So you're not preventing the risk from happening, but you're reducing what the outcome would be. So we have one of our technologies to do this really well. They're a telemedicine company called Job Site Care, and they get involved in workers' comp claims so early on that they're proven to reduce the risk by 50, 60%, right? So that is something where they're reducing what the claim output is, but they don't reduce the actual occurrence from happening. And then the last tier, tier 3, I like to say as, you need a human and an individual there to monitor the risk. So I like to use Procore, Autodesk, those kind of examples where they're aggregating data. You need somebody to log in and look at what's being shared, look at what's being said, and go from there and make a decision off of the data. So you still have a human in the element.
Right. And I think I can speak for everyone in the claims side of this conversation. When you said water risk, I think everyone had a shudder, a fear a little bit, PTSD, because water is probably the biggest pain in the butt ever. It gets everywhere. But anyway, I mean, look, this is a big undertaking, and I'm sure I'm not alone when I'm saying that, people in this industry recognize that there's a need for innovation technology, and that's impacting the way we're doing business. But I'm not sure if people really understand, and maybe you could help enlighten us on the how, right? How is this impacting us when it comes to carriers looking to define that impact of technology?
Definitely. And I think that's the big question mark that everybody's trying to figure out. We understand that technology is going to reduce the risk. We understand that it's naturally different now, but how do we do it? So the way we're approaching it is isolating our risks based off of what the technology would have prevented. And then going from there, getting underwriting and actuarial in the process as well to see if they agree or disagree with the approach.
Yeah, and as I mentioned before, this is where I feel like that, technology meeting industry is definitely where the rubber meets the road, especially, once you start to think about the risk side of things. Is there a natural starting point in that process, Milena, or is that more of like a case-by-case basis with each individual insured, or how do you guys view that?
So it's definitely a blend. I'd say it's case by case for sure, but then also there's a natural starting place with every process, right? So the way we've started is, as I mentioned before, we went to our tech partners and asked them, hey, what tier do you think you fall into? And then in addition to that, we said, okay, you're giving us this theory that this statement that you prevent XYZ. Okay, do you have case studies that prove that? Do you have an ROI that proves that? Do you have some kind of foundation to show us that what you're saying, you've seen it enact, you've seen it through to the end, right? And then once we get that kind of from our tech partners, depending on what tier they fall into will depend on what the best next step is. And then, as I mentioned before, regardless of what the tier is, we're isolating the risk down to what the technology would have prevented.
Excellent. This is a great undertaking, and it's great to see that there's a dynamic evolution of that in the marketplace as carriers really start to connect and encourage the implementation of technology that can eventually help to quantify the impact those risks have on premiums for those projects and for those insureds. I think it's also important not to lose sight of the forest for the trees here, which is even though there may not be a direct upfront savings for insureds now in premium reduction, the deployment of those technologies is going to drastically impact their risk management and risk mitigation, risk elimination, I guess, depending on which one of those tiers you kind of fall into, that's still going to impact their bottom line as a business.
Exactly. Well, 100%. So the biggest thing you said that is regardless, if you're implementing a technology, you are going to be better. You are doing better already. The technology will directly have an impact on your business, on your day-to-day operations, regardless of the way insureds respond. But I'm going to go back to the sense of this idea of a premium reduction, because I know a lot of people, when they hear that, they throw their hands up like, oh my goodness, what are we doing? Wait, we're giving away money. But, all these things run through people's heads. And I want to challenge everyone to think of, you're not providing a premium discount. Again, I'm going to bring up you're adequately adjusting the premium for the risk that is now managed differently. The technology generally changes the risks that we're underwriting to and the risks that we're looking at. So it's not a premium discount. It's just rewarding the customer and rewarding the contractor for doing the right thing and for, again, a risk that is now managed differently.
I really like that. I really like the framing of that, especially because it's absolutely correct. It's not necessarily a one-stop shop. There's a process and there's this discovery phase, and you identify the problem and you take that all the way through the technology. And as it's implemented, your culture, your company culture has changed around how you manage that risk. So that's a great way of thinking of it.
Exactly.
So one thing we like to do on the show, we always want to give a couple takeaways. So if our audience was listening right now, again, it's mostly carriers, brokers, risk managers, contractors, what would you say the 3 big takeaways should be for them with regards to this topic?
Yeah, definitely. So first and foremost, this project and this what we're working on, this innovative insurance solution, it's our way of partnering with our customer. So at AXA XL, we have this payer to partner initiative where customers want more from their insureds than just paying claims, but they want to partner in risk. And this is really enabling that. And this is really taking that on as, hey, we are wanting to partner with you on your risk. This is our way of doing that. Secondly, I would say this results in tailored insurance. We're in an insurance market right now where there's a lot going on, and a lot of insureds feel like, they're getting broad brushed. And this is a way for us to tailor our insurance and look at each individual insured specifically to how they operate and what their business is. And then last but not least, the overall goal is for everybody to be better in a sustainable way for the future, right? As we've mentioned before, and we've said this, technology makes our customers better. And when our customers are better, we are better. Therefore, it's a win-win situation all around.
I like it. Excellent takeaways. And the other thing we always do is an action item. So we've got our takeaways, we've got the 3 big components. But if I wanted to start, right, if I'm listening to them going, well, I use some of those technologies, but maybe I want to get into some more technologies, where would I begin that process? What would that look like?
It's a great question. So I would say first that we know there's multiple ways to manage risk. Technology is just one of those ways to manage a risk. So if technology is your answer and your response, think about the functionality of the technology that you are utilizing, right? And ask some questions to yourself. How are you implementing the technology, and how is it being utilized? Who is managing the technology on your behalf? Is it being used at a 30% capacity or 70% capacity? Does it have a direct impact or an indirect impact? Think about those tiers. Is it preventing, reducing, or monitoring risk? That will help you understand where your insured is coming from and where we're thinking of it. We do everything from a contractor's perspective, right? We put our contractor's hat on and we think about things from their perspective. So this is a way to kind of flip that switch, be that payer to partner, be that partner with us, and think about things in the way we're thinking of it. These are the questions that are running through our head. How you can ask yourself those same questions to see where we're thinking.
Put yourself in the shoes of the customer. That's always great advice, right? If you want to know what they're thinking, that's you got to walk a mile in their shoes.
Yeah, exactly.
As we start to wrap this up, Milena, maybe you could share with us what gets you most excited about your work within the ecosystem. What gets you out of bed, ready to seize the day every morning?
I love this question so much, and it's probably such an unconventional answer, but the unknown. Not knowing what each day brings me, and not knowing that there's so much creativity within the ecosystem. There's so much autonomy to invent things and do things differently and think of it in a different way. And I mean, we have a great team on the ecosystem. I mean, Rose is, as you mentioned before, Mike, Rose is literally awesome. She's always pushing us to think differently, challenge the norm, and think outside the box. And that's what I love about the team so much. And that's what I love about the work that I do, that every day is different. And I am in an environment where I can think creatively and I can think of things differently than the traditional way. And plus, it is always great that we have a fun team and we have a lot of fun together. So that's also another plus.
Be careful. You keep talking like that, I think St. John's going to have you come back to recruit, get some more people involved in insurance. Creativity, the unknown, those aren't exactly the normal talking points for the insurance industry, but certainly it's easy to see your passion for it.
Well, that's why I love the ecosystem.
There you go.
It's not traditional. That's why I love it.
There you go. Yeah. Well, speaking of which, then what trends are you seeing right now in that current role with the ecosystem? Is there something, a certain risk that seems to have caught the innovators' eyes, or is it kind of all over the place?
It's a mix of both. It's definitely all over the place. You definitely have those random things that come up and it's like, oh, wow, you're thinking about this, right? But then also you have your more traditional asks, which I would say that kind of right now I'm seeing them surround around water and auto, your typical, the ones that everybody's talking about. And not just within construction. So we are talking to expansion business, other business units within AXA XL as well. And those are common themes that our other business units are thinking about too, water and auto. So that's why I say those two, because not only are we receiving it from our construction customers, but internally within our company, we see it from other business units as well.
Nice. Well, Milena, this has been such a great conversation, and I know you're new to it, but this is the Building Byte podcast. So that's building insurance technology with the experts. You are today's expert, and I know you're in Staten Island. I used to be in Brooklyn myself. I'm curious, what are you taking a bite out of today? Is there a top pizza place, or what do you got for us?
Well, if we're talking about top pizza places, I mean, Danina's is definitely top on my list, but that is far from me. So for lunch today, I'm probably going to go with some soup. It's a little gloomy and cold here, and I love a bowl of hearty soup. So that's what I'll be eating today.
Perfect.
Fantastic. Well, Milena, thank you for chatting with us today. We certainly appreciate the time. Look forward to maybe having you on again sometime soon and continuing this discussion. But until then, if our listeners want to hook up with you and they want to find you, where can they find you online or email? What's the best way to reach out to you?
Yeah, so feel free to email me. My email is just milena.russo@axaxl.com. You can feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, friend me, send me a message on LinkedIn, or nothing beats a conversation. So feel free to give me a call. A lot of things get misconstrued in email and whatnot. So, I could talk for hours. So feel free to give me a call and I'm happy to have a conversation.
Wonderful. Well, again, we certainly appreciate the time and look forward to catching up real soon.
Yeah, me too. Thanks so much for having me. This has been fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to The Building Byte. This podcast has been brought to you by Proactive. Check us out on thebuildingbyte.com, where you can subscribe to our newsletter and follow us on social media for all future The Building Byte news and updates. You can also find us on your favorite apps, including Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, and Amazon. If you have ideas for episode topics that we should cover on the show, or you know somebody who would be a perfect guest, let us know at connect@thebuildingbyte.com.